with Homer Smith. I'm your host and moderator, Ryan Ruff. It's good to be back with you guys today. And as always, I'll have the star of our show, Homer Smith, private wealth advisor, joining me. And we're going to be diving into another great topic here on the show today. And for today's show, we've got another great guest that's going to be jumping aboard the show, one that's very close with Homer and myself. And we're going to be talking really about this idea of storytelling today. In fact, today's episode, that is, being titled Leveraging Storytelling to Grow Your Business. Our guest today is Emmy Award Winning Director and producer Nick Nanton, as well as he's also a Wall Street Journal bestselling author. We're going to be diving into this idea of storytelling, how Nick weaves through this complicated world, creates these documentaries, these really deep stories and evoking emotion, and being able to leverage these stories to help build businesses, grow them, and really enhance them down the line. And who better than tell us than over 20-time Emmy Award winning director and producer. So really excited to be jumping into today's conversation with Nick. But first and foremost, let's say hi to the main man. Let's say hi to Homer. How you doing, Homer? It's good to see you today. How you doing?
Hey, Ryan. Good to see you as always. And I'm excited for this topic. I mean, we've been doing a lot of non-specific financial topics recently in the last 6 months in the podcast, from what successful families or business owners are doing, from branding, succession planning, health and wealth, and where that comes together, and really issues around optimizing their entire financial picture. And so I think this is just another one of an exciting area that we can talk about that's not just around investments and what things are people are typically thinking about from a financial standpoint. So excited to talk to Nick and pick his brain a bit.
Yeah, and when you look at storytelling, I mean, it's just an innate part of our human nature. We all love a good story, right? But stories have that power, if you will, to be able to move people and enact change and drive them to go do something. And that's really what we're getting into today, really that power of storytelling. So yeah, with that, let's go ahead and bring Nick aboard. Nick, it's good to see you today. How you doing, man?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to have some conversation here.
Of course. Homer, I know you got a handful of questions, so fire away and we'll get into it.
All right, Nick, thanks for joining. Really excited for this conversation. Really enjoyed our friendship over the last few years, and you've done a lot for our business, and excited to share some of the things I've learned from you and get it out to the rest of the world as well. So thanks for joining.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Likewise, on all counts. Let's do it.
Yeah. So recently, actually about a month or so ago, we had a guest that talked about the idea of messaging and having a really clear message to differentiate your business from others and yourself from others. And what I'm really excited about your topic of storytelling is, how do you then take that to a deeper level with this, really telling that story and using that to grow your business. So I think an obvious place to start, since we're really talking about storytelling today, is just for our audience is, what's your story? How did you get into this world of storytelling, and how did you discover how powerful this can really be to grow your business and then support others in doing that as well?
Yeah, well, so as you can tell, you can see a couple of my guitars behind me. I have more. I'm a musician at heart. I started playing guitar at 6, started songwriting at 16, and put out my first record at 18 as a CD at the time, of which there's still about 800 copies under my parents' bed at home. Why? Because I didn't know how to market. And now that I know how to market things, I want them to stay there forever. But I think I fell in love with storytelling unknowingly by falling in love with music and trying to become a songwriter. I mean, if you think about songwriting, you get, about 4 lines per verse. I mean, there people break the rules and it does work, but let's say like majority of songs are about 4 lines for one verse, 4 lines for a second verse, about 4 lines for a chorus. So you got about 12 lines and maybe 2 to 4 lines for a bridge. So maybe 16 lines total to tell a story that can move people to tears, can drop them right in the middle of a story. And so, I honestly didn't really ever make the connection to my documentary filmmaking and my early love for storytelling until pretty recently. I mean, I've continued to be a songwriter, but I think someone else connected it for me. Well, like, didn't you? I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that's it. But like many other people, we grew up with some adversity. I mean, I had a great upbringing. I always tell people we had more love than we could spend. My brother and I were raised well. We have great parents. I actually was just with my parents watching my senior in high school play a tennis match. I mean, they come to everything. They're really supportive, great parents. We moved to America when I was just about 10 months old, and my brother was almost 3. And both sets of grandparents moved, lots of aunts, uncles, cousins. Everyone was seeking more opportunity for their families. And so we came here, and So, everything, I mean, it was a sort of an immigrant's dream, right? Move to America, try to find a better life with more opportunity than a small island. Although, we love the island of Barbados. My family's been there 300 years, but they just didn't feel like it was going to get them. Honestly, I think they didn't think it was going to get the kids where they wanted to see their kids get to. And so, we had some financial adversity, which is not unusual, especially trying to make it in a new country and everything. And I don't, I always say this, I wouldn't pin it on my dad saying it exactly this way, but right about the time when things started to matter to me, that, around 9, 10, 11, 12, I would guess, when the kinds of clothes you'd wear started to matter and types of shoes. And, more or less the message I got was like, hey, we love you and you can have anything you want in life. We just can't give it to you right now. We're just like trying to hold all this together, And so I took that message to heart, really became an entrepreneur very young because I wanted to make money. So I started teaching kids tennis lessons in small groups because I played a lot of tennis. I started mowing lawns. I started doing things that people didn't want to do and were willing to pay. There wasn't a lot of money to them, but it was a lot of money to me. And I learned. I think one of the greatest gifts of my life was sort of that encouragement from not only my dad, both of my parents, but realizing that making money is not hard. Making money, I mean, making a lot of money can be harder, but making money to live is really, or to get some things that you want, is really starts out as simply as how can I help someone do something that they want to get accomplished that they don't know how to do or don't want to do. And so that grew into, I started a t-shirt business in high school. I did all the Greek fraternities and sororities in college. I did all their t-shirts. I started getting car dealers because I realized car dealerships, my family had been in that business, was part of some of the ups and downs. And they got a lot of, salespeople roll over like hotcakes in, car dealerships. So I would get, orders for hundreds of golf shirts embroidered. And so I went to undergrad, University of Florida. When we moved from Barbados, came to the Orlando area, which is where I'm still at now. I love it here. I went to University of Florida, got my undergrad in finance, actually. And then I went on to law school. As a songwriter and musician, I was managing bands at the time. I brought on my business partner as a mentor to help me. And I knew I didn't want to practice a day of law in my life, but I knew my parents encouraged us as immigrant children to get professional degrees. We both said, no, we're not going to do that. And of course, my brother now is a child forensic psychiatrist, boarded in 5 specialties. So he's much smarter than me, as you can tell. But I wasn't going to get into medical school. But I knew that law school would probably be a good thing for me to do. Wanted to be in an entertainment business. Lots of presidents of record labels and others were lawyers, And so I went into law school with the stated goal of never practicing a day of law in my life. Everyone around me on the first day was like, when they say to look left, look right, those people aren't going to be here, and they were pretty convinced I was going to take that spot very quickly. I made it through law school, did a lot of entertainment work through law school, passed the bar, have practiced a little law here and there as necessary over the years. But, from there, honestly, my business partner is like, Nick, he's 30 years older than me. We're still in business now over 20 years later. He's like, Nick, man, the music business is the hardest business I ever seen. Like, he was a really great entrepreneur. He was a lawyer who didn't practice law. He was mostly an entrepreneur, great Christian guy, believer, just a great guy. And I met him through his daughters in high school. And he's like, man, this is tough. And I like to do things. I like to be busy, you could say. My friend Lisa Nichols says, Nick, if it happens one time, it's a situation. If it keeps happening, it's a strategy. So be honest with yourself. So I got married after my first semester of law school. Been married 21 years this year. She still puts up with me. I had my first son a week after I took the bar exam. So life was on full tilt, and it has been since then, thankfully. And so I had to make more money. He said, Nick, if you would just take the skills you learned from working with bands, because what I realized, I didn't understand it at the time, but I had learned a skill set of sort of like celebrity buzz building and PR, and I was media creation. I was like building these bands brands from scratch. Like, they couldn't afford a photographer. So like I'd source a guy who could draw them as cartoons. I'd do the design. I did my own music videos, like whatever. And he's like, that, if you bring that and his skill set, he had sold over $1 billion worth of products and services through personal branding, direct marketing. And he said, if I show you how to do it, we could create a category and you could make more money and feed your family. I was like, yes, that sounds great. There's a few things happened in between. But basically, and by the way, I always want to be truthful. I don't know if he could directly be responsible for exactly $1 billion, but definitely he taught a lot of people and other things that definitely in his ecosystem is over $1 billion, right? Yeah. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. So Ended up writing a book called Celebrity Branding You, which is how to become a celebrity in any business using those skill sets. I actually made my first 7 figures in business by traveling around the country, paying my own way for my own hotels, my own meals, and speaking for free and giving away 1,000 books. So just to try to help people understand how, I always like to help people understand how things really work. Yeah. Have there been people in the history of America and even today that are making money selling books? Yes, not many. And so my opportunity, I knew, was to not be arrogant about it. I wrote a book with my partner I thought was pretty good, but how was I going to convince people to buy it? Well, let me not even work. Let me just skip that step. I'd much rather, instead of trying to make $20 off somebody, let me be as useful as possible. Let me serve them well. I'll spend my own money, take all the risk away, and then say, hey, if you'd like to work with me, I'm available for hire. And so I did my first 7 figures that way. We built the agency. I now have 3 kids, 17, 15, and 11. Oldest 2 are boys, youngest is a girl. I actually did a college tour with my oldest son today as a senior. That's a whole other, ordeal I'm going to have to figure out. And then I did what most creative, artistic people do when they start making money doing something. I decided I wanted to go back to creative and artistic things. We still have our celebrity branding agency. I've worked with more than almost 4,000 clients in 70 countries around the world. And I started getting back into songwriting. I started getting, I tried my hand at filmmaking. Turns out it worked out. And it mostly worked out because I realized by that time how bad I was at most things. So I built a team that was sort of too good to fail. And I just did what I did. We can talk all about how to stay in your own lane, unique ability, how to not get caught up in doing a bunch of things you shouldn't be doing. And then still songwrite. Thankfully, I just, in the last couple of years, I had Darius Rucker cut one of my songs. I had Lee Bryce cut one of my songs. Recently, Ray Lynn, a country artist, cut one of mine. Our music video should be on CMT within the next few weeks. So it's a blast, man. Having a really good time. Trying my best to be a good dad. Only travel 7 nights a month is pretty much the rule, so that I'm here more than I'm gone. And I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of celebrities, but I'm not enamored by celebrities. I'm enamored by people who are so good at what they do, the world cannot ignore them. And so happy to share any wisdom around that, but that's how I got here.
So it doesn't sound like you have any passion around any of this at all.
Super bored, hating life. Yeah, not fun at all.
Well, a lot of our clients and a lot of people that watch the podcast are business owners, whether they're small business owners, professionals, or even larger, manufacturers, distributors, those sorts of things. And how does, from your opinion, your experience, how does telling a better story help them grow their business more successfully or lead their people more successfully? Because it's not always about business growth. It's also about how you work with your team or build the right team. So I know you touched on it a little bit in your intro, but how do you see storytelling playing into all that?
So, I say there's 3 absolutes in life. You've heard of 2 of them before: death and taxes, right? The third one is the best story always wins. It's just the truth. Like, the best story will always win. We have a book called Story Selling that, as Ryan mentioned in the intro, hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. And in there, we uncover actually the brain chemistry and the neuroscience of what stories actually do to your brain. And for a long story short, essentially, when you hear a well-told story, you put yourself in the story and you start having feelings and emotions based on the actions that have happened in the story. And in fact, if you ever want to win an argument, don't argue. Tell a story where you know the outcome and then saying, here's why it happened. And there's no argument. You go, oh, okay, everyone just agrees with you. And so storytelling actually creates a chemical bond. When you hear a well-told story, your brain emits oxytocin, which is a chemical that's from in mother's breast milk, in orgasm, and if you give someone a really long hug. I mean, it's a body chemistry reaction. So, like, from a basic scientific level, you can literally make people trust you faster. It builds trust. Oxytocin builds trust. So it make people trust you better. And look, I mean, I could say, hey, let me share with you for the next hour, step by step, how something happened. Or I can be like, what, let me tell you a story. And when the moment you say those words, people lean in. And I've noticed, I mean, look, I'm still working on my craft as a storyteller, but I have noticed the better I've gotten at telling stories, the more doors open up for me. And so I've told the stories. I did Larry King's life story. I did Dick Vitale's life story for Disney and ESPN. And I've done, I've told parts of your story, Homer. I mean, they're just different stories because, a lot of people would say, oh, well, I'm not a celebrity. I don't have that much I mean, why would people care? And I love the humility. And I agree. I think the same thing all the time. I get caught up in it all the time. And I would just say two things to people. Number one, I was reading, actually, it's funny, Will Smith's book. It's called Will. It's great. I read it pre-slap. So it just hit different, if you know what I'm saying. No, that's a bad joke.
Right.
But I like the example because in the book, he's talking about like a childhood friend. I don't remember the kid's name. It's like Kenny or something. Well, I don't know who Kenny is, but Kenny's not a celebrity. But in the human story Will Smith tells, Kenny matters to me. And it's because he connects me to him as a human and to the story. And it's all based on human emotions that I've had in my life. And so you don't have to be famous for someone to care. My example I give all the time is, Homer, if you and I were hiking a mountain in Phoenix, let's say, and we're in the desert and we're hiking and I'm a little bit ahead of you, because I'm about to fall behind you because you're probably in better shape than me. I'm about to step on a rattlesnake. I sure would hope you would say, "Hey, Nick, don't step on that. That'll be a really bad day." And I don't think I know you would say that. And it's not because you want me to know what an expert you are on snake species. You're trying to help me out. You're like, as a friend, you're trying to help me. Well, that is what storytelling is. Nobody wants to hear your story, to hear you wax philosophical, unless you're a comedian, right? Okay, great. Other than that, like, can your story help someone? If your story can help someone, like I loved telling Larry King's story because I wasn't even 40 yet and he was 83, I think. I was getting a 40-year shortcut. Like, why wouldn't I love his story? So telling your story, sharing your story is all about how you overcame obstacles, how you found success, how you dealt with the worst pains and failures in your life, like all those things. And that's what I'm addicted to. And every one of you watching has had some version of that. Now, a lot of you also say, well, I'll use the military example. I have a friend who I reconnected with him after almost 20 years, hadn't seen him since high school. And I asked him what he'd been up to. He said, I joined the Army. And I got injured, so I couldn't deploy. And I was like, hey, man, well, thanks for serving. He's like, no, dude, I didn't do anything. I didn't even go overseas. Like, I was so bummed I couldn't go overseas. And it made me just connect the dots because I have another friend who is one of the lead rangers in the Battle of Mogadishu that has been memorialized in Black Hawk Down. And his name's Kenny Thomas, great dude. And Kenny didn't want to tell his story because he was like, I was just one of a few hundred soldiers or whatever it was in this battle. And like, I didn't get shot. And then the guy who gets shot, I talked to one of those guys like, well, I didn't die like that. So like everyone has this guilt complex. Like I didn't do as much as the next guy. Well, I can assure you, everyone is thankful for that person giving their life, but that's not the prize, right? Yeah. So it's like, what are the stakes? The stakes are always human. The stakes are like, it could be as like, should I get on that bus or not? Should I have bought that car? Like there's everyday life has stakes. And when you learn how to share the human elements and the stakes, people will lean in. People like, I tell a story about playing craps with my crew and it's like, should I put in the next $5? And everyone's like, and it's $5, but it's like, it's a human reaction because I'm relating it to them for their own good to help them learn a lesson or whatever. And that's why people lean in and go, oh, because everyone, like at the end of the day, I really think we're all wired by nature to want to like pack as much as we can in our heads, especially when it comes to negative things. So like, shoot, if that happens, I want to know how to get out of that. Yeah. Like if that happens, I want to make sure that I have the right response. And the worse the experience is, the more a lot of times you can learn from it. Sometimes it's better as well, but so that storytelling works literally for everybody. We've told riveting stories. I'm not kidding, of stem cell replacement doctors, of financial advisors like yourself, of car dealers. Like it's humans. Like people love people. So how can they learn from them? Well, by telling stories.
So think of a business owner. And maybe even try to think of more traditional business owners. I know we work with a lot of really high profile people. I know to your point earlier, that's not the end all be all, but how you were able to help bring this story out and the ability to storytell better, that they could clearly tell you and tie back to a transformation in their life, their business. It doesn't have to be, any of it, but just kind of walk me through a story where you've seen that make a huge difference for somebody.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the thing you don't realize when you set out to tell your story in I mean, really in any format, but let's just even say a documentary format, like where you're committing to, an investment of time and money and everything else. When you see your story come back, it actually frees you a couple ways. You realize, wow, I've sort of done some things. Number one. Number two, you don't ever have to tell those same stories ever again because they are now memorialized. Like people can just watch the thing. And yeah, I've seen, man, I have so many stories of that. I have a car dealer who is super successful in the North Carolina area, but his dad owned the dealership before he did. So most everyone assumed that his dad just gave him the dealership, right? Just, he's sort of a spoiled kid. And turns out that he bought the dealership from his dad. And now, like, even just people seeing that, they respect him a lot more. They respect his opinion a lot more. And that gets them a further introduction. I told a story of a mutual friend of ours, Lan Shaw, who is manages people's money. She came from China, and she told me she didn't have a very interesting story. As I'm telling her story, I learned she lived for 3 years in a tent encampment on the streets of China after an earthquake. I'm like, that's fascinating. But even her, she's like, I don't have anything to talk about. And so her story of sort of immigrating to the U.S. and finding success and learning how to help other people, her clients are riveted by it because they're like, man, if someone can I want someone with that much just grit. I want someone like that who can help me out. My stem cells, I mentioned my stem cell doctor I did a documentary on. A lot of people aren't even sure what stem cells are or how they could possibly work. And we interviewed multiple people who were a veteran who hurt his back in active duty, a dancer who hurt her legs and was, like, I don't know if I could, I'm pretty sure one of them was, I don't know if I could say it exactly, but essentially wondering, how am I going to live like this the rest of my life in pain every day? Like having pain all the time can't be fun. I mean, I'm a baby. If I have pain for a couple of days, I'm out, And so literally by showing those stories and how they help those other people change their life. I mean, we did a story on an organization that gives service dogs, takes rescue dogs and turns them into service dogs and gives those service dogs to warriors who suffer from post-traumatic stress. And by telling that story, several people got in line and got in the program and got service dogs and said they were seriously considering taking their own lives. And there's a story about dogs and service members. And it literally, that can happen in any situation because, usually you're working with people, Homer, who are like really, on the high end of most people consider wealthy, and they're planning. But there's a lot of pressure that comes with that too. I mean, I actually can't imagine, like, I have no pressure of losing any family wealth. Like, we didn't have any, right? So, but I can only imagine second or third generation, like there's a lot of pressure and sometimes even suicidal pressure on people like that because they don't know what to do. And anytime we feel like there's no better outcome, when we've tricked ourselves into going down the rabbit hole far enough, like, man, if you could share your story and give someone a glimpse of hope, like, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah. And what I've seen on that note too, with the clients we work with, they want to know what other families are doing in their situation. Obviously everybody's different, but they want to know what other successful families are doing to navigate what they're dealing with, and maybe the mistakes other families have made. And I've definitely seen it, the story version of telling them that and being able to take them through step by step of a story well told. Their engagement, the leaning in, and their understanding of the importance of what we're speaking to is much better if I'm telling it as a story than a bunch of bullet points of numbers and data.
Absolutely. One of the things we always do when we're sharing someone else's story, especially in longer formats, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, is we share their client stories alongside them. So even if you're not sure where to start with your story, like, go share a story of someone you helped, and they will share emphatically how much you helped them. And they'll see, like, one of my favorite strategies for some of my clients is let's do a new testimonial, like a vignette, like a little portrait of a family or a client or a person once a month. And after a year, you got 12. And let's pick some different types of avatars. Like, this is a married family with children. This is a retired couple that never had children. This is a young, whatever meets your cross section, where people can, because at the end of the day, people watching these really want to look at something and go, oh man, that person, I have a lot in common with that person.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like I hope, even though most people watching this are not from Barbados, they might have heard about my kids or college or like whatever, music, and like we have some things in common, and that builds trust. And so the more you can start to share different aspects of how you've helped your clients and let them share it for you. You don't have to say a word. Let them share their stories, make them the heroes, and you will get more business.
So I want to take it to another level because there's a phrase we've been using the last couple of years, this idea of a mission-driven celebrity expert. So it's taken this storytelling, I think, to kind of another level. And because you mentioned earlier, like the best story wins. And I know that's kind of a theme behind that idea of a mission-driven celebrity expert. What does that mean to you? And what's the power to a business owner, a professional, in being that mission-driven celebrity expert?
Yeah, so I'll start backwards, I guess. I'll start with the expert, right? So as you go on in your career, you develop expertise at things. Now, sometimes it's even hard to recognize our own expertise because it's just what we know. We're not excited by what we know. I can play guitar. I'm really excited by. I'm enamored with drums and piano that I can't play, very well at all. But when you develop expertise, and it can be ever so thin in expertise that can move mountains. I mean, I know people who just know one little thing that have monetized it to millions of dollars because it just is a game changer. But as you get better and better at what you do, well, being an unknown expert is usually not helpful. I mean, there's some people who want to stay off the map and the radar. Those aren't my people. Like, I'm not saying you should show up and say, here I am, I'm the best. Like, I hate that too. Like, when you do your job and become a celebrity expert, everything else around you tells the story for you. Like, I'm chilling in my music room today, but my podcast studio is right behind me. It's got my Emmys there. It's got a bunch of framed stuff on the wall. I've got my 3 gold records right here. I don't have to tell you about that. The story's there. And there's other ways to do it, right? With video and written stuff, books, bios, all that stuff. But when you're an expert, a celebrity expert is someone who, as again, I said it earlier, I don't like working with celebrities. I like working with people who are so good at what they do, experts, that the world can't ignore them. And becoming a celebrity expert is just being willing to share your knowledge. That's all you have to do. Being willing to share the fact that you have knowledge that could help someone else. Again, whatever style you do it in is your style. I would choose to not do it in an overly what I call arrogant way, but it's worked for some people. Like if that's your style, if you're no BS sort of what, like, okay, whatever. If you're a drill sergeant, be you. I can't tell you not to. And so becoming a celebrity expert is just sharing your knowledge and using strategies to get known that you have that expertise. And then being mission driven, I just decided years ago that COVID being a great example, like when COVID hit, like if you just decided you were going to do something else, which is fine, like that meant that you weren't mission driven typically about what you were doing before that. And so, but the people like me and you who are still doing the same things we did before that, we just figured out different ways to do it. Like if your mission is to get out in the world and do something, and I build a brick wall in your doorway at your house, you're not just going to go back to bed. You're going to find a way to knock that brick wall over and keep moving. And I just decided, my mentor, one of my mentors, Dan Sullivan, he doesn't want to work with anybody who doesn't have a 25-year, 25-year goal in their industry. He's just like, yeah, it's just, I want someone, and that's mission driven. So same thing. I only want to work with people who are so passionate that they're going to get up and do it no matter what the world says or does, as long as they're trying to help people, of course. And they're a celebrity expert. They are willing to share their knowledge and willing to get known to the world so it can help more people. And, again, that might not be for everybody, but our mission at our agency is to help the most people. And that's to help the most people like you, Homer, who you're doing great work for people. I want to help as many people like you as I can with storytelling and other things so that you can do what you do. You can help a lot of people not, wake up one morning and all their money's gone. I mean, I remember one of the things that happened with us financially, my parents invested in a mutual fund, I think it was, with one of my uncles who didn't know he was working for a Ponzi schemer. Yeah. Didn't know. And so they lost a lot. I mean, they didn't have a lot, but they lost a large portion of their portfolio due to this guy just not knowing. And It's like, man, I want to help people avoid that.
Are there I guess, industries, professional, areas that somebody is in where, becoming a mission driven celebrity expert seems to work better, or should it matter? Um, yeah.
I have not seen. I mean, I have not. I can't think of a good example. I mean, if maybe if you're a spy, I don't know, but like other than that, I mean, think about it. I mean, if you're in if you believe in what you do and you believe that you're ultimately helping people, why wouldn't you want more people to know you can help them? And either you help more people, or if you can't get to them all, you help the ones that are most ideal to be helped. And if you're that good at it and you have that many people wanting help, you can license your system to many other people who around the country can help those people as well. So no, I have not seen an example of a place that it doesn't particularly work. I'm sure there is some sort of random example, but no, I
Yeah.
mean you just have to be willing to stand behind what you believe in, because we've also as you get to know people, you can do all the background checking you want, but if they haven't committed the crime yet or done something wrong yet, you just don't know, right?
Yeah.
And so if I can build a brand for just about anybody, but if they suck at what they do or if they're taking advantage of people, it's their house of cards. It will crumble very quickly.
Cool. That makes sense. Well, I know, being respectful of your time, really appreciate it. Before we wrap up, because you've mentioned a couple of them in passing, but I know you're working on some really cool stories, some really meaningful stories to you and to a lot of other people right now, and some that I saw back in the fall, that were just premiering, and others that are coming up soon. So maybe just, a couple few minutes on some of the really cool stories you're telling that you have a lot of passion around, and yeah, and I'm just yeah, very interested in that.
Cool, thanks. On the cause-based side, we have two four-part series on human trafficking we're finishing right now. One that tracks a global trafficking ring all across the globe, which is fascinating. Um, we're doing a documentary for a veterans organization called Creative Vets right now. We finished a documentary called The Truth About Reading, which is um, we're working on distribution right now, and it talks about how since we started measuring reading in America, the standardized test basically shows that we've never crossed over 40% grade level literate. So effectively, 60% of people in America are walking around what you'd call subliterate. They're not quite at the level they should be. Um, and the stories, as you saw, were pretty mind blowing for that. I'm about to start. I sold my last documentary, my last biography on Dick Vitale to Disney/ESPN, and I'm about to start working on my next big bio, which I will announce soon. And then I'm also working on a documentary called Hero, with some incredible people, four real life heroes, two men, two women, on how to become the hero of your own journey. How you're not supposed to be waiting for lightning to strike. It's how to gear up right now to live the life you were put on earth to live. And then there's more coming. We got a ton of projects in the works, and having a blast, thankfully.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for business owners watching this, professionals watching this, and kind of hear the message and want to get better at this and find a way to become a mission driven celebrity expert, or just get better at storytelling, what's the best way for them to reach out to you and your organization to see what ways you guys might be able to help them?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, my website, nicknanton.com, as long as you spell it correctly, you can either get on the list there, or you can reach out from there. On all the socials, basically, I'm at Nick Nanton. And I'd love to have you, if you'd like to check out what we're doing. It's always helpful to have more people around who can watch and share. Like, we just released a documentary called It's Happening Right Here, all about human trafficking in America and how kids get duped into sextortion through apps and games and TikTok and Roblox and all these things. And so we make the films to spread messages, and so the more people who are willing to just check them out or willing to spread them with us, we love that. So thank you, man. I'd love anybody reach out anytime, and you can find me under my name pretty much anywhere.
Appreciate it. Well, I've personally learned a lot from Nick and his group on how to better tell our story, and just really excited that we were able to get Nick onto the show for this month. And so, Nick, really appreciate your time. I definitely encourage everybody to go to the website, check out the work Nick is doing. I think it's very powerful stuff. And hoping you'll be able to help some more people tell their story even better. So appreciate it, Nick.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
All right, fantastic, gentlemen. Well, hey, look, we want to say one final thank you to you folks out there watching and listening at home. If you took anything away from today's discussion, you benefited from this idea of storytelling and leveraging it to grow your business, do us a favor, go ahead and subscribe then to this show on whichever platform you check this out. That way you never miss out on a conversation between Homer and myself, or like, another great guest like Nick that we had today joining us to talk about this idea of leveraging storytelling. And by subscribing, you won't miss out on those great episodes down the road. But for Homer, for Nick, I'm Ryan. We're going to go ahead and say so long now, but we appreciate you stopping by and being with us on Advance Your Wealth.